What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Jimmy Smith, Ryan Moody, MMA Show, UFC 251 from Yas Island. You've got a cage outdoors. You've got a title fight, rematches. If this doesn't check every box that you need a fight card, you're listening to the wrong podcast, because we're certainly going to disappoint you if this one does. We're going to start, though, with a fight that I hate these fights, Jimmy. Amanda Ribas, Paige Van Zandt. The reason I hate these is if Paige wins somehow, it throws her right back into title contention where she really doesn't belong. And I'm not one of those people that's just down on Paige Van Zandt. I know a lot of people are. I feel like she's a decent fighter. She's just not a top fighter in the division. Wins over Rachel Ostovich usually don't turn into title shots. She does have good punches, works in her trips. I mean, if you watch her fight, she works in her trips pretty good. She is a little bit more balanced in terms of her ground game than most give her credit for, but I don't think she wants to go to the ground with Amanda Ribas. Ribas coming in 4 straight, and honestly, she just has talent to be better than Paige. Clearly an advantage on the ground, but I think it's going to stay on the feet. I think it's going to be more competitive than what I've seen. Just nobody has given Paige Van Zandt any type of way to win this one. I think it'll be close, but I think it's going to be a stoppage in the second round for Amanda.
Ribas is better. I mean, it's just not trashing Paige Van Zandt or anything. I think Ribas is just a superior fighter. Paige Van Zandt hasn't fought a lot of great talent. If you look at the Ostovich fight, she was losing that fight right up until the end. Ostovich tried to take her back, ended up riding too high and got reversed, and then Paige Van Zandt put together a fight-ending combination. Good for her. So she does have those instincts. If she gets you in trouble, she can capitalize on it. But not just everything you went over. When the thing about Paige Van Zandt that mentally I wonder about is she's talked about everything in her life but fighting. I made more money on Dancing with the Stars. I made more money on this. I make more money on Instagram than I do fighting. Okay, then why are you doing this? Especially at a time when going to a gym to do nothing is dangerous. And so I just wonder how much her head is in it. Yeah, I mean, she if she wins this is the last fight in her contract, so the UFC will pay good money to keep her, or she can go to Bellator and make more money. Who knows what the deal is? She'll have some free agent juice if she wins this fight, which means the UFC probably doesn't want her to win this fight. That's why she's going against a 9-1 killer in Amanda Ribas, who against Mackenzie Dern showed really high fight IQ. Great striking, great distance, great timing. Never let herself get drawn into the kind of fight that would take the fight to the ground. She's very, very smart. Really uphill battle for Paige Van Zandt, let's be honest, for a lot of reasons. But my big question is, how much does she really want to be a fighter when all she's talking about is I make more money doing everything else?
It's interesting, but I feel like to a lot of people, the UFC is what she's primarily known for. She has to stay known there, right? Like that's the vehicle that drove her everywhere else. So she kind of has to keep the keys to the car. I think isn't her boyfriend in Bellator? So it would be interesting if he took that path, or rather she took that path. I hate that we're having a second part on this fight, but I feel like, she has to stick with the girl that got her to the prom to a degree. And that's being a cage fighter. Everything else was a result of that. So I understand what you're saying, but I feel like this might be the final time she plays this card to a degree.
It's going to have to be, because once it's, as you said, if she does beat Ribas, which is going to be difficult, it's one of those things where, okay, move up at 115 and show me an easy fight. The weird thing is that 115 is like an embarrassment of riches in women's MMA. And everything above that's a wasteland. It's really weird. I think Ribas is a contender. Mackenzie Dern very much in the mix. Tatiana Suarez, the winner of Andrade versus Rose Namajunas, which we'll get to in a minute. You have Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Weili Zhang. It's just like it's just murderer after murderer in that division, and then everything above that's just crap. So Paige Van Zandt, should she win this fight, she's got to move up, and none of those fights are easy.
Yeah, and speaking of that move up, you mentioned Rose and Andrade, the rematch. I think some people forgot about. I mean, Rose was so dominant, but Andrade's title run was so, I guess, unspectacular and short. It just kind of gets cliff noted. So to me, I really fought this one because I don't want to take anything away from Jessica Andrade, but the reality was this was kind of a fluke way to win. Now, granted, I say that because this wasn't a tactical game plan to slam her, but Jessica is a good fighter. She loves to come forward with pressure. She works the body, and she does have good slams. So it wasn't like this was outside of her wheelhouse. But, she is one of the few fighters that will just come out 100% and solid for a win. When I look back at Rose, it's been a while. We've had a whole lot of mental things going on with her. But the reality is she looks great just about every time she comes out. Her striking gets better just about every time. She moves in well, out well, footwork, head movement, protects herself, really uses her jab well. And honestly, I think she was winning the fight until that ill-timed slam. So I think she is going to put a complete fight together here, get back on track, and hopefully has everything on the personal side cleared up and can put this loss behind her with a little bit of redemption.
And that's the issue. I think Rose is the better fighter than Jessica Andrade, period. End of sentence. I think she's generally a better fighter. But remember last time when she lost to Andrade, she was almost relieved. Not almost. She said she was relieved. I didn't enjoy being champion. It made me not be a fan of MMA, and I felt really pressured and all this stuff. And then she loses 2 family members to COVID, which is god-awful, absolutely terrible. She has all my sympathies when it comes to that. A win over Jessica Andrade puts her, assuming it's dominant, right there against Zhang Weili. End of story. Like, she's probably next should she dominate Jessica Andrade. Of course, could be a rematch with Joanna Jędrzejczyk because that was such an amazing fight, but she's right there in the mix. My difficulty is if you have issues with being champion and this fight gets you there, gets you knocking on the door, will she have that unconscious flaw? Will she make that mistake? Will she, when the going gets rough, and in the back of her head, if she knows if she beats Andrade, she's right back in the spot that made her uncomfortable last time. The spotlight she didn't like is right on the other side of this fight with Andrade. I wonder if we see that hesitation, we see her mentally kind of defeating herself, and that would really suck, because I think she has all the talent in the world, but by her own admission, she's had trouble dealing with the mental side of success.
Yeah, and I thought about that, but I also felt like if she didn't want that pressure, she wouldn't have came back and taken this fight. Or like you said, I mean, who knows? It could simply be a redemption story to beat somebody that beat her, but it doesn't seem like that would be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going with Rose. I think she wins. But I'm just saying if she doesn't, or if we see very early on any kind of hesitation, I think it's mental more than physical, right? It's emotional more than tactical. That's the X factor here.
Agreed. So, this next fight is a rare one for me. I don't often change my mind on a fight after watching film, but I did it on this one. Now, Peter Yan, Jose Aldo, so much has been made about Aldo coming in on 2 losses, but listen, at the end of the day, he's where he is. Set the Moraes fight aside. This is the fight that's going to happen. When I watch this, I think Aldo would really serve himself well to be conservative here. Try to slow this fight down, maybe add in some leg kicks back into his game plan. It never really seems to happen. But, he needs to be very defensively sound, which he can do. He's fought some of the best in the world. Jan beat Faber with that incredible head kick. He's built quite a resume. But, in going back, has he really beat somebody like Jose Aldo? And I just don't think he has. And I feel like Aldo has the tools to really frustrate him. Jan is almost hyper-aggressive at times, spinning attacks, elbows, and he does a lot of them very well. But to me, I just think Aldo has seen people like Peter Yan, but Peter Yan has not fought somebody at Aldo's level. So watching all these fights and looking at it with a renewed perspective, I'm actually going to take Jose Aldo to win this fight in what probably to some would be an upset.
I think it definitely would be an upset. According to the odds makers, it would be an upset. If you believe that, I'd throw some money at it. The issue to me, and I agree with what you're saying about and we'll deal with this in the main event too, the recency bias of Peter Yan. He destroyed Uriah Faber, but as Aljamain Sterling pointed out, and I completely agree, he was supposed to beat up a 41-year-old Uriah Faber. It would have been crazy if he lost to Uriah Faber. Like, he's getting all this juice from destroying Uriah Faber, who's a big name, but well past his prime. And if you look at his other fights, the elite talent he's faced, Jimmy Rivera and John Dodson, okay, those are the 2 elite guys he faced, and, tough decisions. He won those fights. Both went the distance, both very tough guys, and Peter Yan was a little bit tougher, but he's not generally a finisher. He's not a go out there and blow you away kind of guy. He's solid. He's big. He, can take risks. He can throw some loopy punches, but he likes to make the octagon small. I agree that he's never taken on anybody like Jose Aldo. But this is a diminished Jose Aldo, and it's a credit to Jose Aldo that he's probably 80% of what he was in his prime, and he's still damn dangerous. Usually when a fighter, especially with Jose Aldo's style and the number of fights he's had, when they go off a cliff. They're just like, blah, not the same guy anymore. Jose Aldo didn't really do that. You know what I mean? He's still competitive past his prime, and the guys he's lost to, and people point out the losses, and they should, have been what? The elite of the elite. 2 to Max Holloway, who's probably number 2 at 145, right? Volkanovski, who won the title. Marlon Moraes, one of the top 135 pounders in the world. So when he's lost, it's been to the best. Now, the issue that I think catches up with him against Peter Yan, and the reason I am picking Peter Yan, is he's had trouble. He's always in his whole career had trouble stringing a ton of rounds together. Even in his prime, he either knocked you out or he just destroyed you for 3 or 4 rounds, and then he took the last round or 2 off. He always did that. You can go back to Mark Hominick, any of the fights that he had that went the distance. Frankie Edgar, it was like he beat you up in the beginning, and then he coasted at the end, right? He was just really explosive and he tended to kind of wear down. Now, as he's gotten a little bit older, we're seeing that in 3-round fights, and that's what cost him against Marlon Moraes. Is we saw flashes of the old Jose Aldo. Remember, he was like putting it on him and throwing really good hand combinations and everything, and then he'd stop. And he'd let Marlon Moraes physically back into the fight. And that's what led to a close fight and a disputed decision, but a decision nonetheless for Marlon Moraes, is Jose Aldo isn't putting minutes together like he used to. He used to put like 15, 20 minutes together, and then he'd coast for 10 or 5 or 10. Now it's like he's having trouble putting 5 minutes of solid aggression together, where he needs breaks in the middle of fights. And we saw against Max Holloway twice. It was like he hung with him for a little bit, and then when he needed a break, Holloway wouldn't give him one. So I think that catches up against Peter Yan. I do think it's a competitive fight, but I think Yan, his tendency to win by decision against elite talent, serves him well against Jose Aldo. I think Aldo hangs with him for a couple rounds, but Peter Yan keeps the pressure on and probably wins a decision.
The Jeremy Stephens fight changed a lot of my perspective on that. I'll leave that out there. But I agree with.
He can still do it. No, but that's. I mean, I don't mean just to downplay that, but we've seen flashes of greatness, right? We've seen little like, oh man, there's the old Jose Aldo. It's just less and less frequent. We're not seeing it as much, but when he does get those moments like he does against Jeremy Stephens, it's like a time machine. He's right back where he was.
I think he also knows there's less good Jose Aldo left than there is Jose Aldo that we've seen. So yeah. You got to take that into account at some point.
This is his last one. Yeah, I agree with you.
Moving forward, big time fight here. Max Holloway, Volkanovski. Max undefeated for a long time. Obviously, was one of the more surprising one-sided fights we've seen. Max does a great job with pressure, works in body, leg kicks. I'd like to see him use his range a little bit better in this fight. For Volkanovski, really puts on pressure well too, and really almost created a blueprint. I think if you go back and listen, we talked about it. Almost created a blueprint on how to beat Max Holloway. Attack the base, go for takedowns, try to force it to the ground or up against the cage. I think the leg kicks really won him that fight for the most part. And I feel like Max can come in with a better game plan with more expectation of what's going to happen. So this one was a really razor's edge fight for me. I mean, super close. And ultimately, I hate to say it, but almost like with Jose Aldo's case, who do I trust more? And I actually found myself trusting Max a little bit more. I think this is going to go the distance, and I feel like Max is going to grit out a win on this one.
This is one on this card I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. When it comes to they're like, all right, here's $1,000, bet it on one of these. I wouldn't put a dime on this fight because, and I don't know how much of this is truth, how much of this is exaggeration, how much of this is lies, but you've heard about guys Holloway training over Zoom with his coach, not sparring at all to get ready for this. Volkanovski was on lockdown pretty much. I interviewed him a couple times for ESPN International, and it was like he was locked down. He had some injuries and all this stuff, and he wasn't able to get the training he wanted to get. I'm sure he's talked about wanting to knock Holloway out, which I think is the worst thing on earth he could do. He won the first fight by being disciplined and controlled. And like you said, picking him apart, chopping him down, not getting, drawn into a brawl, not getting drawn into a war. But all his talk leading up to this is like, I feel disrespected that, fans thought this fight was close. I'm going to knock him out this time. If he follows that philosophy, I agree with you completely. Holloway's going to knock him out. or at least, have a much better time than he did before. But if Volkanovski fights discipline, right, and sticks to the game plan and doesn't get emotional, I think he can do the same thing he did to him the first time. But I don't know how he's going to approach this fight. I don't know how physically prepared he's going to be. I don't know how physically prepared Holloway is going to be. So this is one of those, when it comes to like the training and mental standpoint, that it's such a toss-up. I'm betting that that's pre-fight bravado by Volkanovski. He doesn't try to knock him out. He stays composed. He stays disciplined, and he's able to catch a Max Holloway who always fought guys who accepted a brawl, right? He always, remember, is his specialty is the Hawaiian style brawl. And when it comes to Max Holloway, he's always had the ability, when it comes to like the Ricardo Lamas fight, I point to the center, they met me there, and we threw down. Well, Volkanovski didn't do that. And so as a result, Holloway never kind of developed the ability to corner somebody and make them fight that way. And that was the problem, I think, with the Diaz brothers. A lot of the times is when a fighter doesn't want to engage them, Carlos Condit is a great example. Benson Henderson, a great example for Nate. If they don't want to engage you in a brawl, they don't really have the footwork to make you brawl. They don't have the footwork to really cut you off and force you into that kind of fight. So Holloway, he may have developed that in between, but that's what he needs. It's a way to lure or make Volkanovski fight the kind of fight he doesn't want to fight. I don't think he gets that done. I would go Volkanovski by decision again.
It's so funny you say that, because I felt the same way about his interviews where he came out and it was like, wait a second, you dominated that fight, like you won, and now you're coming off like you have something more to prove. Like the last thing you need to do is go in there saying, well, if the first fight wasn't enough, now I'm going to go in and put an explanation point, on it. And it's like, no, that's a really bad game plan to have against Max Holloway. Like he's almost like a mini Mark Hunt. Like you don't want to do that. But it's almost like they're coming in a different, and like you said, it could all be posturing, right? But it's almost like they're coming in with totally different aspects of the fight, but they're like inversed it. Like Max should be like, no, I was, a better fighter. I just didn't have a good night. It's my time to go in and prove that I'm the better fighter. And it's just totally inversed. It's very strange.
Yeah, really weird. And if he goes in with that chip on his shoulder, I mean, that's what Holloway wants, right? Prove that your balls are bigger than mine. Watch what happens. That's the worst thing ever. You should go in going, I'm the champion. Holloway has to take it away from me. I'm going to do what I did last time, because Holloway didn't have an answer for it.
Yeah, exactly. I literally wrote the book on how to beat you, and I'm going to do it again. And instead he's like, well, let me go and prove to you how I'm better than you. It's like, no, that doesn't even make sense. Why are you saying that? So moving forward, we'll have to address the elephant in the room. There are very few times I've literally felt a punch in the gut for someone the way I did when Gilbert Burns tested positive. Obviously, his health comes first. His family comes first in any of this. But man, if we've ever seen somebody build themselves a resume to earn a title fight the right way, no gimmies, hard fights, great performances, it was him. And I understand that, Jorge Masvidal stepping up is a little bit of poetic justice, because here's a guy that was a journeyman, kind of came on the scene at a lot of people's expense and great performances too, and, certainly beat some legends. But at the same time, I feel a little bit disappointed in knowing it's not going to be Kamaru and Gilbert, because this just had the trajectory for all those great championship fights, and we just don't see the payoffs all that often. And I feel like it was right there for us to grab.
The deal for me about this fight is that fans are so into this main event when they seem more excited about it. They seem to love it more. They seem to be like, DC said it's probably 300,000 more buys because of it. I've heard, 500,000 more because it's Masvidal. I think Burns is a tougher fight. I think this fight, I'm not saying it's going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination, is the key to this fight is Jorge Masvidal is a great medium range striker, but so was Gilbert Burns. But he doesn't have the jiu-jitsu. He doesn't have the cardio of a full camp. I know Dustin Poirier said he worked hard. He was my sparring partner, all this stuff. There's nothing like a full camp dedicated just to you, and he didn't get that. And so a lot of Kamaru Usman's strategy in training, getting ready to fight, is still going to be useful. I think he was wary of Burns' striking. He was wary of his explosiveness, wary of his hands, of his combinations, of his power. And he's got to worry about all that with Jorge Masvidal too. But now Usman can take him down, not worry about getting caught in anything. Not that Jorge Masvidal's jiu-jitsu is bad. I think it takes great jiu-jitsu from all the training partners I've talked to who have rolled with Kamaru Usman. Like, dude's a monster on top. It's just hard to catch that guy from the guard. And that's where Jorge Masvidal is going to have to operate. Also, it's one of those things where, about the recency bias of Peter Yan, look, Usman tends to win by decision. That's what 4 or 5 in a row before the Colby Covington knockout were all decisions? That's generally what he does. So he's used to long, difficult fights. That's what he's great at. 100 total minutes of fighting. In his last 4 fights, he went 99 minutes, 10 seconds. Now, if that stat doesn't tell you the guy wins long fights, he's not going to go in there and try and knock Jorge Masvidal out in the first minute or get in some wild exchange and test his power. He's not going to do any of that. He's not going to do that. He's going to out-wrestle him. He didn't care how boring the Damian Maia fight was. He didn't care how boring the Rafael Dos Anjos fight was. He didn't care. He wears them down, and that's how he wins fights. And that's what I see him doing in this fight. So I think a lot of fans are going to be disappointed because Masvidal I think a prime, ready, full camp Masvidal is still an underdog to Kamaru Usman, let alone with 6 days notice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Jorge and Gilbert have similar strengths in their striking and the fact that they come in relaxed, really quick, really accurate, great combos. But Jorge struggles with distance the way that Gilbert doesn't. Jorge doesn't have the ground pedigree that Gilbert does. And that's not taking anything away from his ground game. Gilbert Burns legitimately, go back and listen to our shows, certifiable, one of the best in the world. Now, for Usman, he's got a great right hook, power. It just seems like he's getting better the last couple fights, especially working up against the cage, transitioning down to the ground. And those are areas where I think Jorge Masvidal is going to struggle. I mean, Jorge kind of doesn't like that pressure sometimes when he's not the one applying it. And I don't think it's going to be as interesting as a fight fan of a main event. I think it's going to be entertaining, but as far as just getting the 2 best in the world, listen, I get it. He beat Diaz, BMF belt, knocking out, Ben Askren there with the knee. Like, it's all well and good, but it's not at all what Gilbert Burns has done. And if you think it is, then go revisit some history books and see who Gilbert Burns put away. So I understand the mindset of the entertainment side, and that's great for the sport. Like, we need entertainment right now. But sometimes we also do need to see the 2 best in the world rack it up and see who's best. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wait at least another few months for that to happen now.
Yeah, I don't want to say best case. Best case, he knocks him out. One thing I said earlier this week is, look, if Masvidal can give us 2 good rounds, he's going to get a rematch. If he can give the fans enough, like, oh, man, if he had a full camp, or, man, he really had Usman hurt and then ran out of gas in the 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, whenever it is, he can sell that. Man, if I had a full camp, I beat this guy. If he can at least give us that, he'll get a rematch and make a ton of money. It'll be another big pay-per-view. So to me, all Jorge Masvidal has to do is not get blown up, essentially, in the first couple rounds. If he can go at him and make this competitive for 2.5, 3 rounds, fans will be behind him 100% for a rematch. And he'll get right back in there with a full camp. So it's not as though it's all or nothing, that the loss kills him. I think a competitive performance is huge on 6 days notice. That will make him arguably, even more fans. What a BMF that he put up a great fight and yet didn't have a full camp. And God, I want to see it again for sure.
He's walking into an unbelievable scenario, and it took a really good amount of courage to go into what he's doing. Yeah. But I don't think Kamaru's going to let him out of the 2nd round, to be fair. If he's smart. Now, I'm not saying that isn't possible. It certainly is. And Kamaru's getting more and more confident with every fight. I wouldn't want him, if I'm his coaches, to go in with that mentality. Right? Don't give this hard-hitting street fighter a chance to knock you out in the first couple of rounds. I think the strategy will be, look, don't try too hard for a finish in the first couple of rounds. Take this guy down, wear him out, and then put it on him.
He might get a finish. I think it'll be very late. I think it's most likely by decision. Kamaru Usman is generally a pretty careful fighter. You know, everybody says like, man, he really has improved in his striking. Look what he did with Colby Covington. I think he didn't try to take Colby Covington down a lot because the guy was a Division I All-American and didn't want to waste a lot of energy. That was the smart play. You know, wear this guy down on the feet rather than waste a bunch of energy trying to take him down, you know, and it paid off in the end. I think it's the other way around with this one. The smart money is double leg, double leg, double leg, double leg, wear him down, and then maybe get a ground and pound finish 4th, 5th round. So I think he might get the finish. I think it will be a long fight.
Well, we will see, and we will be here to recap it when it's done. We appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.